Thank you, Ali, for your kind introduction. Thank you for inviting me here to join all of you. And thank you all for taking the time to come out. As we say in Hawaii, aloha, aloha. Namaste, and salam alaikum. You know, in Hawaii, aloha is often used as a way to say hello and goodbye. But there's a much deeper meaning to this word that I want to share with you. Because when we greet each other with aloha, what we're really saying is, I come to you with an open heart. I come to you with respect and with love and with care. And this aloha is a recognition that we are all connected, that we are all brothers and sisters, regardless of our race or ethnicity or religion or any of the things that make us unique. We are all family. So it's in this spirit of aloha that I come to you and that we are gathered here tonight. Thank you so much. Our nation was founded on the principle of a government that is of the people, by the people, and for the people. For the people. Where all people are treated equally. Where we all stand together, united as one in this country. But unfortunately, we see too often how our people are being torn apart. Torn apart based on the color of our skin, or the way we worship, or our gender, or how much money we make, or what country we are from. People in positions of power, both in politics, in greedy corporations, in the media, acting on their own self-interests at the expense and harm of our people, further deepening the divides between us. But this is not who we are. This is not who we are as Americans. This is not what our country is about. We are a nation that was founded on the values of religious freedom. And as we see, unfortunately, time and time again, these freedoms are under attack. We see time and time again religious bigotry being fomented to drive that wedge between us, to tear us apart. We see persecution. We see violence. So we can never be complacent, not any one of us, by standing silent as others are being attacked for their religion, regardless of where the attack is coming from or who the attack is targeting. Now, there are too many examples of this to cite throughout history and in this day that we live in today. And you heard some examples already earlier tonight. When I first ran for office in Congress in 2012 during my campaign, my Republican opponent at that time said on national television that Tulsi is not qualified to serve in Congress because being a Hindu goes against the United States Constitution. Just a few years later, another Republican opponent posted all over the internet and said everywhere she went that a vote for Tulsi is a vote for the devil because she is Hindu. We heard how just a couple of weeks ago, a 6-year-old boy was murdered by an exclusivist fanatic in response to his mother saying Shia prayers at the Prophet's temple. We saw how last year 11 people were shot and killed as they worshiped in a synagogue. And how just last week at a Hindu temple in Kentucky, threats were made and vandalism was spray painted all over their walls. Unfortunately, the list goes on and on. We cannot be complacent and allow these threats and these attacks to occur on our brothers and sisters. We must stand up and speak out with one voice and condemn this bigotry and condemn this violence and the harm and the pain and suffering that it causes. Stand together and stand as one, speaking out for the freedom that we cherish, that freedom that allows us each to worship as we choose, or for those who choose not to worship, to live in peace, and to live in freedom, with respect for one another. As stated in the Quran, to you be your religion, to me be mine. Now, the terror that we see being perpetrated in the name of God or in the name of religion is actually a refusal to honor the inherent freedom that all people have, this freedom that is given by God, to choose to worship and love God or to choose not to. And this religious terrorism is born of this exclusivist ideology that says, my faith is the only legitimate faith. And anyone who does not believe as I do must either be killed or converted or enslaved or raped. Terrorist groups like ISIS and Al-Qaeda share this divisive and exclusivist ideology, at which is the heart of the Wahhabi Salafist ideology that's propagated by Saudi Arabia around the world, showing a complete disregard for human rights. Saudi Arabia being a country where dissidents are beheaded, where women are oppressed, and religious minorities are persecuted. All things that run counter to the freedoms and principles that we hold dear here in this country. Now, throughout my time in Congress, I have introduced legislation, supported legislation, and continued to have strong calls on the administration to end their support for Saudi Arabia's genocidal war in Yemen, to stop selling weapons to Saudi Arabia, and to recognize that Saudi Arabia is not our ally. Their interests are not our interests. The list of examples and evidence to back this up are many, but just to name a few. This genocidal war in Yemen that's being waged by Saudi Arabia with United States support has killed tens of thousands of innocent people, has caused tens of millions of Yemeni civilians to starve, to be sick without access to medicine, creating the worst humanitarian crisis in a generation. Saudi Arabia is supporting terrorists. You saw an article in CNN just the other day. That was not surprising if you know and understand the history, where Saudi Arabia is taking the weapons that the United States is providing to them and giving them to Al-Qaeda in Yemen, the very same terrorist group that attacked us on 9/11. And Saudi Arabia continues to spend billions of dollars spreading this exclusivist Wahhabi Salafist ideology around the world that fuels these terrorist groups like Al-Qaeda and ISIS. This ideology of violent exclusivism must be defeated. It must be defeated. And it must be defeated by the ideology of inclusivism, of plurality, of love and respect for others. This inclusive ideology that we all must share with people everywhere, in churches, in mosques, in temples, and on the streets. And it's this ideology that, in my home, springs from a place that we call this aloha. This recognition that we are all connected, that we treat each other with respect. We may agree on some things, disagree on others, but we treat each other with respect and with love, recognizing that we are all children of God. When we have this aloha and love for each other, then that motivates us to take action in the spirit of service. Because when you care for someone, you want to do nice things for them, right? When you love someone, you want to protect them. You want to stand up and fight for them. This is who we are. And this motivation that comes from love to put service before self is what we need most in our country, in our leadership, and in the world. In 2003, I enlisted in the Army National Guard. I raised my right hand, volunteering to serve, volunteering to put my life on the line to serve and protect and defend our country and our people against all enemies, foreign and domestic. The same oath that's taken by every service member who joins the military. This oath that is rooted in a principle and value of putting service before self. It is this principle that's at the heart of every soldier. And it is this principle and these values of putting service before self that I will bring to the White House as your President and Commander-in-Chief, bringing honor, respect, and integrity back to the presidency. For too long, we have been led by leaders who put themselves before service to the people. We've been led by a professional political class that think of themselves lining their pockets or building their power or thinking of their future, rather than making decisions about policies that best serve our families, that best serve our friends and our communities, which is why we must stand up, which is why we have no time to waste, why we must gather together, stand as one, and fight for the soul of our country. We cannot afford to wait. We have to stand up against bought and paid for politicians who bend their will to special interests and lobbyists instead of the will of the people. We have to stand up against big Wall Street banks that gamble with our futures. Stand up against greedy corporations in the healthcare industry and big pharma who put their profits above the health of our people. And stand up against those who perpetuate bigotry and hatred. Yay! We must stand up against this administration who claims to believe in America first, but who sells our troops, our weapons, and our interests to whatever foreign country is the highest bidder. This dishonors my brothers and sisters in uniform and their families and the great sacrifices they make to serve our country. We have to stand up against powerful politicians from both parties who sit safely in their ivory towers, making decisions about what new wars to wage, about what countries people will die in next, wasting trillions of dollars, trillions of your taxpayer dollars, hundreds of thousands of lives, undermining our economy here in this country and our security and destroying our middle class. Because we know all too well that every single dollar that is spent on these regime change wars, or the new Cold War that's here and the nuclear arms race that's brewing, is a dollar that's coming out of our pockets. It's a dollar that is not being used to meet the urgent needs of our communities and our people right here at home. This must end because we deserve better. This is what I will do. I will work to bring an end to these regime change wars, an end to this new Cold War and a nuclear arms race. I'll work on building partnerships with other countries and building relationships that are based on cooperation and not conflict. I'll have the courage to meet with both adversaries and friends in the pursuit of peace and our national security. Because if we lack that courage, if we lack the courage to meet with those we disagree with, the only alternative is war and more war. As we look at history, we know that bending this arc away from war and towards peace will not be easy. The forces that we stand up against are very powerful. They have held on to this power for far too long, and we will not allow them to continue this destructive, costly, counterproductive path. The only way this can be done is when we stand up and we stand together. When we stand up, motivated by this love for each other and love for our country, only then can we bring about the kind of change we need to see. Only then can we know and realize that there is no obstacle that we cannot overcome. So this is the challenge that stands before every one of us. This is my challenge for you. We can't afford to stand on the sidelines. We can't think that someone else will fight this fight. We have seen far too many people suffer here and over there for far too long. So I ask you to stand with me. I ask you to stand with me and build this movement for peace, both here, at home, and abroad. A movement that fulfills the promise of this country for freedom, justice, and equality for all people. Thank you so much. Aloha. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you.
You're going to open the floor up for questions?
Sure.
Just hold it.
Thank you, Ali.
I have Taki. There are a lot of questions that I got, and
I'm a soldier. I've served on 2 deployments to the Middle East, and I've seen the cost of war firsthand. In my first deployment to Iraq, I served in a place that was about 40 miles north of Baghdad, and I served in a medical unit. And one of my jobs every single day was to go through a list of names of American soldiers and troops who had been injured or had been casualties of this war the day before. And I went through this list name by name to see if there were any soldiers from our unit that had been hurt, to help make sure they got the care that they needed, either there in Iraq or to get them evacuated as quickly as possible. As I went through this list every day, I was struck by the people who were paying the price for these wars. I thought of their families at home who were anxious and worried for their loved one's safety. And I thought of the politicians who had made the decision to start this regime change war. And I wondered if they were ever kept up at night thinking about my friends, these soldiers, these service members who were paying the price. I lost some of my friends who were there who didn't make the trip home. Others who came home, but who came home with wounds, both visible and invisible, who continue to pay the price for wars. Seeing and understanding and knowing the cost of war firsthand is why I am so committed to fighting for peace. I will not bow to the interests of the military-industrial complex.
Wow!
I take absolutely zero money from any political action committee or corporate interest. And there is no way that any neocon or neo-lib war hawk will influence me in my decision to end regime change wars led by this country. Does that answer your question?
Yes, absolutely. Thank you very much. Next question for you. This is I got a lot of questions. An anonymous from the crowd here. If elected, how would your administration be able to deal with the human rights violations in Saudi Arabia?
I mean, the first thing is being honest and truthful about the fact that Saudi Arabia is not our ally. To be honest and truthful about their actions, the things that they are doing, not only within their own country, but also the terrorism that they're supporting in other countries around the world and the people who are suffering as a result. We need to stop supporting Saudi Arabia in these actions.
Thank you. My third question, I'm sure you can hear it. Again, religious freedom is a cornerstone of American society. How would your administration handle the issue of Islamophobia, especially promoted by President Trump?
By doing exactly what we are doing here today. By gathering together, by raising awareness around the kinds of religious bigotry that is being perpetuated in this country, and by standing together as a religious diverse society, people who choose to worship in different ways, and knowing that if an attack is placed on you, it is an attack that is placed on me. That an attack on any one of us is an attack on all of us. And the only way to bring these attacks to an end, to bring this bigotry to an end, is when we stand together and we condemn these attacks, we condemn this hatred and violence that comes from this religious bigotry. We cannot only stand in our own corner with our own friends or people who worship only like us and think that the attacks on someone else don't matter or don't impact us. We must stand as one. We must call out and condemn this bigotry wherever it comes from and whomever it is lobbed against.
I'm sorry, we do have time for 2 questions, so I'm going to ask again. This is anonymous from the crowd. There are many powerful forces in the U.S. who are interested in maintaining economic ties with Saudi. The fact is that Saudi Arabia is heavily invested with the U.S. How would you overcome the forces in the U.S. who in their minds money is more important than words?
Well, one of the things that I've put forward in Congress is a legislation called the Off Fossil Fuels Act. And weaning our country's dependence on Saudi Arabia's oil is an important thing, not only for our environment, but also for our security. To take away this excuse that people try to use, that we must turn a blind eye to Saudi Arabia's actions because of this power that they wield over our country. The United States should not take a knee and kneel to Saudi Arabia.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Last question for you. Are there any other congressmen, congresswomen who has the same stand that you have to build a stronger coalition to win? Good question.
To build a stronger coalition to win.
For you to win.
Ah. Well, half of Congress is running for president. I'm joking. It's early. I am most excited and most focused on coming to communities like yours all across the country, meeting with and hearing from people and letting them know why I'm offering to serve as your president and commander-in-chief. One of the most frustrating and disheartening things about Washington right now, and for too long, has been that Washington is very much out of touch with the realities that we face in our communities. The conversations that happen in the walls of Congress are about which political party can beat the other, where you have Democrats who won't sponsor or vote for a Republican bill, even if it's a good idea, or Republicans who won't vote for or co-sponsor a Democratic bill, even if it's a good idea, where sometimes they'll take that bill and say, no, I won't support it because it's Republican, but then they'll turn around and introduce the same bill and support it. Washington is hugely out of touch with the challenges and the dreams and the opportunities that exist within our communities. The leaders within our communities who are taking action to solve the problems that exist. So this is why we must lift up the voices of the people, lift up these leaders, lift up these actions within our communities, and bring back a government that is truly of, by, and for the people. And when we say that we need this government of, by, and for the people, it's not somebody else. Of, by, and for the people means every one of us. That's us. And the only way this happens is if we choose to make it true. If we choose to make it a reality. That means no one stays home. No one stands on the sidelines. No one chooses to opt out. Because there is a role for every one of us, and there are many different ways that we, each of us, can take action to make this necessary and positive change a reality.
I think you deserve a standing ovation for all the good answers and our speech.
We are at the end now. We thank our
Thank you.
president candidate.
From your mouth to God's ears.
Tulsi Gabbard, for giving us the opportunity over here and sharing your views on the presidential run. We will try to talk to them and get you in a different setting, hopefully, being this is a different, and plus we have a very important event